Welcome to another episode of the Curious Midlife podcast. And I'm very excited to have someone who's just a real life superhero on the podcast today. And you'll understand why there's kind of comedy in that as well. My dear friend, Andrea Ross. So I know Andrea from the movement world, from the parkour world. And Andrea wears many hats, as all the women who I'm intrigued to talk to on the podcast too. So Andrea is based in Squamish, north of Vancouver, I believe so. And hello, Andrea. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Julie. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you today.
Me too. We haven't seen each other for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And the last time we did was at a parkour event called The Art of Retreat. And what were you doing there, Andrea?
Oh my gosh. I was in my element is what I was. Yeah, I went, I think, for similar reasons to a lot of people that were either teaching or running a workshop. I'm a movement hobbyist and movement professional, and I'm always just so curious. And parkour was one of those sports that caught, I was so passionate and I just fell in love with it. And so it was a gathering of all of these movers from such different backgrounds and geographical places, and then I got to meet friends like you and Anya and like people that I still count as friends to this day, just from that one retreat. So
I know, no, it was really incredible. And there are those events in life where it's just like, wow, those 2 days just embedded so many things, the ripples that came out of them. So to give you a more representative introduction, so you are what I would call a mover with a capital M. And to say that you are a movement professional, if I said, well, I've seen you, even though it doesn't look like you. So I remember watching the TV series Jupiter's Legacy and going like, that's Andrea. That's Andrea. You were probably flying through the air or doing something like that. And then I also remember watching Supergirl and being like, that's Andrea. Then Wynonna Earp, that's Andrea. And so you are both a stunt performer and now a stunt coordinator, I've seen as well. So tell us a little bit about, how does someone who is now 40 years old, is a mother, and still an amazing stunt woman, what is the reality of that? And how did you get to that point in your life where someone's going, this is Andrea with a capital M. She is a superhero. Any idea you have of a superhero that isn't drawn in a comic or CGI'd in, this is this woman flying through the air. This is this woman beating the crap out of someone. This is this woman falling, like rolling down the stairs. This is this woman jumping through windows. What else do you do? Like, I mean, so let us into your world.
Oh my gosh. I feel, one, you just made me feel like the most special person ever. I feel like I'm wearing a cape now, and
You do.
you made me feel very super. But yeah, I think, to take you back, long story short, about how I got here, I was a gymnast from the age of 2. So my dad put me in gymnastics because I was so clumsy as a toddler. He feared for my athletic future. I came from a family of athletes. My aunt went to the Olympics for heptathlon. My uncle played in professional football. My other cousins, they were national level track and field. Like it was an expectation in our family to be an athlete. And so as I started very clumsy in my youth, my dad put me in gymnastics. And fast forward many years later, I was able to do a backflip on a 4-inch beam, but then trip crossing the street. So I was then gifted with very, very selective coordination, which is still true to this day. But I got too old and tall for gymnastics. And then I found a myriad of other activities. That's when I got to experience power cheerleading. That's when I found freestyle wrestling, when I was in high school at the age of 16, which I would say was my greatest passion before parkour. That, that consumed 15 years of my life. That was what I, attempted to make the Olympic team on. That was probably the hardest sport I have ever done, both mentally, physically, emotionally. And it was the most rewarding as well. And then through university, and finishing up wrestling, I found parkour as I was coaching gymnastics, because a lot of the parkour athletes would come into gymnastic centers. And this is where I got to meet this world that our worlds collide in. And through that, I started competing in it and like traveling. Like that was at the time where, Red Bull Art of Motion and all of that. And a lot of the people that I was meeting at these either competitions or gatherings, because, I enjoyed the gatherings because they were fun. But I'm a very competitive person. So I like having a goal. So I also enjoy the competitive side. But I was meeting all of these people that were professional movers, or movers with the capital M, that were getting into these films, and they were getting paid to do parkour and move. And that was the first time where I realized, oh, like all of my skills trying to be a professional athlete, this is that, and I can get paid to do these things that I do for, for fun.
I mean, it was incredible as well, because I remember there's always been stunts in films. There's always been people leaping across rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
But then there is a difference of then the movements that parkour people do. And now it's just standard. Any action sequence. There are step vaults, there are tic-tacs. And for anyone listening to these are just kind of moves that are in parkour where there's a certain way of going over a railing, or there's a certain way that someone's going to run up a wall, or there's a certain way they're going to run and kick off one thing and then land on something else, or there's a way they're going to go over a railing or jump across a thing. Like sometimes it's very subtle, and other times it's very obvious. And I just remember being like, it's everywhere now. This kind of evolution of parkour from it was quiet and kind of unknown and kept away, and then the internet came along, and then phone cameras came along, and then a few very consequential films were made with, whether it's the opening sequence of Casino Royale, whether it was District 13. I remember seeing in one of the Die Hard films, it was like, and there's even a comment, I think, where Bruce Willis says, like, what's has the circus come to town or something? And and stuff like that. So you were in at that early-ish, like that second wave of, so how was it going, having this parkour background, having this like high kinesthetic intelligence, this movement library, which not many people have. Not many people get to play in the arenas you play in. And that's why it's so, I think, really interesting to hear from people who do. I had access to this and to be around movers, even though I wasn't moving. Like, I had access to be around all these movers for so long. So I kind of know what the concerns are for them, or what it's like to have that. But there were very few women getting into the stunt world at that time. So tell me, what was it like though? Like, how did that journey then progress, and what kind of conversations were happening around it?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And actually, probably I would like the female parkourist that became a professional stunt woman, that showed me what that could be, inspired me, and later, became friendly with me. Lucy Romberg is probably one of my most inspirational people. And and she was the first person that I met. And I basically hugged her from behind. She had never met me. And I whispered in her ear,
You're a wrestler. You're just going to ambush people.
Yeah, basically. I was like, you have no choice but to like me or run away. Like, you have two choices, and you're a really good runner, so you make it. But I whispered in her ear, I'm like, my name is Andrea Ross. I think you are the coolest human ever, and I hope one day that we can be friends. And I was like, this is either going to go one of two ways. And she turned around and she was just like, oh, so great to meet you. And then we got talking, and she, from there, like, it was hard because she was in the States and I'm in Canada. And so it's two different beasts trying to get in. Same as in UK. They have very different ways of getting in. And, you kind of, you get in geographically for the most part. So where you work, where you live. But she put my name forward for jobs. She answered all of my questions. She kind of laid out what the scene was. And then it came to the point where I was running a gymnastics center as a big kid job after university, and, pressure from the family to move on and, get a real job.
Get a real job, Andrea. This is
Right? Get married, have kids, get a real job.
so weird. Yeah.
Anyways, and I was living in Calgary, and my boss, who at the time was my boss and is now one of my best friends, she went to me. She's like, Andrea, there are jobs that you're good at, and there's jobs that you love. You're very good at this job, but I don't think you love it. And I remember this moment where I was like, she knows,
Yeah.
and we had this brilliant conversation where she was just like, what would make you happy? And to that point, I had been so afraid of verbalizing and trying, because I was so afraid of failing and not making it into film, and not thinking that I had what it took, and all those excuses that you make for yourself. Let's not try. And she basically took every barrier that I had, and she's like, okay, I will give you a 3-month leave of absence. Your job will be waiting for you if it doesn't work out. Okay, I'm going to help you find a sublet for your condo. Okay, here's a contact in Vancouver to like blah, blah, blah. And I looked at her, I was like, well, crap, like now
Shit, no excuses.
I gotta try. And so I packed up my little car, crash mats on top, bike in the back, all my sports gear in the trunk, and I drove from Calgary to Vancouver. It's an 11-hour drive. It's a beautiful scenic drive through the mountains. Had no idea what I was going to do, but within 10 days of just being there and getting used to the city, I was not going back, even if I didn't make it in stunts, because that was the first time where I let myself be free to like pursue something unabashedly that made me happy. And from there, I started training where other stunt people train, because that's one of the pieces, is having the skill is one, knowing the people that can give you the opportunities, is the other, and then timing and circumstance is like that third piece, being in the right place at the right time and feeling in a certain mood. And so I started doing that, and I ran out of money at about a year's mark from doing all the training and trying to like live in Vancouver, which is so expensive. But I was making headway and connections, and then at about a year and a half in of like doing the hustling, they call it, I got the call for a show called Supernatural, and I had given my stunt package, my reel, right, which was basically me just doing a bunch of parkour and some wrestling clips, and you kind of highlight your skill set. And he's like, okay, this is your shot. And I still remember the day I got that phone call. I was shaking, I was vibrating. And I can honestly say from that moment, it was a really quick trajectory into that becoming my full-time career. I think within 4 or 6 months, I was making a decent living and not having to do, I was working background on film sets, and being the person in the cafe while the actors are like having a conversation, doing that, which was great. I got film experience. And I was coaching gymnastics. And honestly,
how old were you when you got that first stunt gig?
I was 33. That's when I started my career. Yeah. And most people that I know in this industry are 10 years younger when they start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what is it like? I know a little bit from Fizz Hood, from when she was going through the process of getting on the stunt register in the UK. Yes. So what's the dealing? Because she had to suddenly, she was this gymnast with incredible parkour skills, and then she suddenly had to be a horse rider and a scuba diver. And some kind of martial artist as well. And it was like, well, people are only really going to give her parkour job, so does it matter if she can scuba dive? Like, it seemed very strange from the outside. But tell me, so what did you have to go through? And it was massively expensive as well.
I'm familiar with that system only because I've had friends that have gone through it or are going through it, and it's really intense, because you need, I think, like 4 like areas of expertise before you even get on the registry. And so that's a lot of training. That's like 3 to 5 years of your life just collecting a certain level. In North America, it is very different. We don't have a protocol to get in, which it has its pros and cons, right? Like there's there's something very lovely and organized about like, doing the registry. Cause I'm like, I gotta do this, 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 and this. And then I'm on the thing and I can get called.
And ta-da, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, in Canada, you can be really good at just one thing and you could get a call to do just that one thing. You get called as oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, well, an expert in your field. And I've since, so I got in as like an acrobat, because I did parkour, I did gymnastics, I was performing circus while I was, in Vancouver. So that was, that all played into, do you know where you are in space? Can you move efficiently, precisely? Can you, and I have since, devoted the last like 7 years while working to adding to the tool belt, to taking horseback riding lessons, to, doing taekwondo lessons and moving up the belt system, taking kickboxing private
I've
lessons.
seen you do things with swords online. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm just doing swords.
Literally now I call myself a skill collector. Actually, that's kind of how because one, there's some people that get into stunts and they do their one thing and they do it well and they stay with that. And then there's other people that become like generalists, which, is what I would consider myself, where I'm a little good at a lot of things.
I'd say you're more than a little. I'm biased, but I would also say you're more than a little good at many things.
That is so kind. I think that also maybe speaks to how hard I am on myself sometimes, or my expectations. And also, I would say though, I've been so fortunate to be surrounded by such exceptionally talented people that that next level, that the unicorn of each activity is in my eyesight at all times. And so it is sometimes hard to see where you are when you're staring and training with the best of the best. So I thank you. I appreciate that.
No, and I think that, for a lot of people, I mean, comparison is the thief of joy, as they say. And for a lot of people who are at the beginning of their movement journey, or they're returning to, or, whether it's after becoming a parent, whether they've had an injury or just life circumstances. I mean, I've been over here and now I stopped moving, or this happened and then I'm coming back to it. That I think there's a lot of kind of, or just there's a lack of appreciation of how hard that is when the skills grow and grow and grow and grow. So to be already very competent and capable and still have that, I think that's maybe perhaps even harder in your field of play.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but I think, everything right now, I'm not gonna lie, being a working mom is hard. Everything is hard. So maintaining my skills is hard. Learning new skills is hard. Keeping my sanity, it's hard. Staying married, it's hard. Like, luckily, all of that also brings so much joy. So it balances out. But everything is hard. But I love learning new things. Like I'm so excited now to be like, when I was a gymnast and a wrestler, I was doing one thing and I was doing a lot of it and I was doing it to be the best at it. And even though I dabbled in other things, like that was my singular focus. And so I was very afraid to try new things because new things took time away from me being excellent at something else. Opportunity cost, you only have a finite number of hours. And so unless I was really good at something right away, I didn't pick it up or spend much time on it. Parkour happened to be one of those things that I picked up easily. I was like, oh, I can do this. Like, this is awesome. And, and it's related enough to so that's really the only reason why I picked up parkour while I was still wrestling, internationally, because otherwise it wouldn't have been. And now that I have almost the job expectation to be learning new things and adding to my tool belt, I've been able to like enter martial arts with a very beginner mind where, you're humble and you're like, I'm going to be total crap at this. And I might be crap at this for a while, and actually enjoying the journey and knowing that just a little bit of learning goes such a long way, because I think one thing that I am proud of myself for is generally picking up things, especially movement things, fairly quickly. I take feedback really well. I really love like analyzing like biomechanical like corrections and movements. Like I can nerd out on that, you know, all day. And so I've really enjoyed that part of my journey of just diving in and learning something new and being okay with not being good at it, and knowing that it still will add value to my life, even if it doesn't mean getting a stunt job from it. Like the learning is now the thing, not the competing and winning goal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And how is it in terms of a mindset? Because a lot of people will look at the things that you do and we can kind of put into words some of those things. So what are the most common types of stunts that you're asked to do? Like what would that body through space or in the environment?
Falling down.
For just falling down. You're paid to fall down.
I have literally found a way to come up, make my clumsiness a commodity. Like I have found that people will pay me to be clumsy, to trip and fall, to get hit and fall, to be on a wire and fly through and then fall. You know, I was just working on. I got to work on The Last of Us, the HBO show, which was probably the most recent thing I enjoyed the most working on, because it was quite practical stunts. So there wasn't a lot of wires and all of that. It was mostly just our body. And I got to be like 8 different characters. I died a lot. I got shot. I don't know, all the things. But then I also got to be like a creature. So I had like full prosthetics on, and we had to like, learn how to move like these. We actually went to like infected school basically, where we got to with an expert mover and learn how to like be these like infected kind of zombie like people. And it was so fun. Oh my gosh, Julie, like you would have loved it. Like it was all
playtime.
Yes, exactly. And now I've forgotten my point. What was I saying?
What are the stunts that people like? What are the things you're doing? So you're falling a lot.
Like so I doubled Nana in the first episode of Last of Us. So this 80-year-old woman, and she turns infected. I hope that's not a spoiler for everyone, but anyways. And so I have this like bald cap, I have like a 5 head, and I'm in a nightgown, and my stunt is I'm running out of a door and I basically collapse onto this porch. So like no hands, just like collapse, basically face first onto this deck. And then I come to life, and I get to like quadrupedal like charge at Pedro Pascal, and like I'm gonna get him, and then
you die. No spoilers. I don't know. I haven't watched
it doesn't end so well for me, but you'll watch it. But that's a prime example. Like fall down, get up, run, fall down again, with various objects and humans flying at you at the same time. I would say that's like, what I get most. When I'm working on the superhero shows, a lot of it is like wire work, which I personally love. That feeling of like flying through the air is so fun. Like getting to do a descender where you're hanging 40 feet in the air and they drop you really fast to like, inches or feet from the ground. It's like being at a roller coaster park. And I personally love rides. So getting paid to do it is pretty fun. And then I would say, like, I've had to do water stuff before. So cold water work where, I'm in the water, like fake drowning or jumping off of a ship into water. I've had to do some driving stuff where you have to like drive and slide and hit a mark, or like spin the car around while there's camera people by, or drive through a barn blind and stop on a mark that you hopefully can see when you go through. And then fighting, like lots of fights and beats. And depending on the show, some of them are like bar brawls, some of them are very technical, and yeah.
And what's so you have these physical skills, you have the physical capacity, you're doing things where they're choreographed to look like there's pain and suffering for a realization so the audience has empathy and can feel those emotions. And I know on sets it's minimized to mean that you are not actually hurt. However, to think that this doesn't take an impact on your body. So how do you manage, number one, your mindset and your emotion going into these things on a regular basis, and how do you like downregulate from that afterwards? Because for some people it could be like, oh, she's just a crazy thrill seeker and da 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 da. And I've always found that and when people talk about, oh, parkour, or these are just adrenaline junkies, these are the calmest people I have ever met, because they can actually control their adrenaline. And they're actually the opposite of an adrenaline junkie. So I don't know, can you speak to that a little bit? Like, how is the mindset of going into these things? And then how is the mindset after you've done the things?
Yeah, that's such a just a really awesome question, because like you, it sounds like I get a lot of people that are like, oh, you must be an adrenaline junkie or a thrill seeker, and I'm like, I'm actually like the exact opposite. Like I am an athlete. I am very calculated and progressive in my skills and my risk taking. Like, I am not oh, let's just huck this and see what happens. I've never been that kind of person. And most of the people I work with are not that either. It just so happens that they've slowly progressed to such a level that the average human looks at that and they're like, oh, they just jump to that and do it. And you're like, no, you missed the like 10,000 hours of like the Bell family doing hour after hour, little jump over little jump and bigger jump and bigger jump. And so depending on the risk level of the job, and usually like especially like the really good stunt teams, they have all of that in mind. And so you get rehearsals and you rehearse with helmets and pads and mats, and you slowly ease into the intricate motions where you're only adding in a new factor and then a new factor. And so by the time that you go to camera, you have it pretty dialed. That being said, also, like, it's not an if you get hurt in stunts, it's when you get hurt. It is an extreme sport and activity with great danger. It's same as and so you do constantly try and prevent and minimize damage, but damage is an expected part of the job. And so when I'm going into like something that makes my heart flutter, because I'm like, ooh, there is a lot of factors and I need to be on. A lot of it honestly is that sports psych of trying to get into the flow state. And so I don't actually want to be elevated, me like, yeah, let's do it, oh my gosh. Like, nothing good happens for me when I'm in that space, like all jacked up. Like, but you need to be elevated enough to like perform like you're like that, and to get into it. And so, yeah, I do a lot of visualization. Like if I'm doing a fight scene, I'm always going through all of the beats in my mind the whole day. I'm always like keeping my muscles and everything warm and slightly ready, because on a film set, as you know, there's a lot of hurry up and wait. And so, you get called on, you could be on set for 14 hours and they don't use you until the last 2 hours. But you
But you're
don't
ready
know.
the whole time.
Yeah, because you don't know that they're using you the last 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
until that last 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a lot of fight or flight management. And like after a big job, I'll drive home and it will take me a few hours to come down to go to sleep.
And how do you marry this combination of this very unusual kind of extreme professional life, which few people get to kind of understand or have insight into, and married home life? You have a son, you have 2 dogs, you have a husband. So what is stunt mama life? Like, how does...
It is a hot ball of fun chaos, Julie. I think to say that managing a life in the profession of stunts and managing a life outside of it, it's not easy. It is super challenging. I think, it's hard for people that have their stuff together and are very organized and all of that. It's even harder when you don't. And I know, for me, I'm graced with a very, very supportive partner who, works mostly from home and loves that I love my job. I mean, it's not always easy for us because there's times he's still like, well, when are you going to be home? I'm like, I have no idea. But he is that steady force or steady, you know, presence at the home. And we have wonderful child support. So we have a nanny that is with us full time. And my in-laws moved to our town when I was pregnant because they were so excited to be grandparents and they wanted to be out west anyways. So they moved all their stuff out 4 provinces, came across, and they've set up shop 3 minutes from our house. And so they're a regular, you know, it was about building, you know, building your village and relying on the village. And the hardest thing I had to learn was to ask for help and admit that I can't do it all because I
But
was
you're a superhero,
right.
Andrea.
I know. Well, and like I play one and I come home, I'm like, okay, where are all these superpowers? um but I also, from feedback from the people that know me the most, like I do believe I get a lot done in a day, more than the average bear, and that is one of my skill sets, is to be able to like not so much multitask, but like take a day, make a to-do list, and hammer out so much
Mhm.
stuff efficiently. And also I enjoy that. Like I
Mhm.
get joy out of ticking off that to-do list, and I count keeping my marriage, keeping my child alive, taking the dogs for a walk, filling my own cup by doing cold dips, going for hikes, taking, you know, a martial arts class, having a glass of wine with friends. Like I do that. It just means that I'm doing something all the time.
I mean, yeah, the film industry is, it's none of that is like, as an industry, it's just so not a relationship friendly lifestyle. And film sets and film projects, they are such a bubble, they're such a world, and you step into them and it's very hard to keep the threads during the day to
Mhm.
any sense of normalcy that's happening outside.
Yeah.
If, like, whether it's global events, whether it's what's happening in your bathroom sink with the plumbing, like they're
Yeah.
very it's very immersive. And so I always admire people who have this normalcy outside of the film bubble.
Yeah, I
um
think it's rare too, because
yeah.
like you said, it is so hard. Whether you're in front of the camera or behind the camera or in the production office, it doesn't matter. It's because it's all encompassing when you're in it.
Mhm.
Everyone is, you know, on that ship. And so it is a very ebb and flow thing for me where, you know, I'm in work mode, you know, for a while, and it is very intense. And I find, you know, all of the other balls drop. My house is a mess. You know, my kid, he doesn't forget my name, but, you know, I don't get to spend that quality time. You know, we're booking the dog walkers in more than we would so that they are, you know, at least get exercise and, you know, are getting taken care of. And, you know, I make a lot of IOUs to my husband of like date night, quality time, sleep in, you know, and so on the other side of that, I know that like once I'm out of work mode, then I
You're
have to
present.
really consciously leave work mode and then pick up the other balls and juggle those for a bit. And what I would say to that is, out of that, I would say that my stunt career has, I'm so excited that it still exists and thrives for the most part. But it is still a limiting factor on how far I can go or what I'm willing, you know, to say yes to. And so I don't, you know, I don't want to be flying around the world 10 months out of the year working on projects. I did before I had a kid, but
Mhm.
I don't now unless my kid can come with me and you know and that kind of thing, which I feel like he could. But that is definitely either an energy that I put into the universe. And I'm like, I don't know if I could handle that or should handle that. And so I'm conscious of trying to. It's not a balance day to day. It's an annual balance that hopefully it always. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? Like,
Absolutely. And I mean, how is it to have a career which is so dependent on your physical performance after having gone through the most incredible human physical performance of growing a child inside you and birthing? Like, how was that experience for you?
Do you want the like brutal honest?
Yeah, go, like speak your, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I absolutely hated being pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It was the hardest thing that I did. And I love my kid now, and I am grateful for him to be in my life now. But that 9 months of being pregnant, I was very depressed. I had an identity crisis. I really struggled to see how I come out of that alive or with any, resemblance of who I was before. It was a really scary, hard time. For me, also, I got like super fat. I loved donuts. And I mean, not fat, I was pregnant, I was growing a child, but like I really, for someone who was in gymnastics, so had to be tiny, had wrestled, so was weighed every day, and then in film, where literally how you look is how you get jobs, and then going into like whale mode, which I embraced heavily. Yeah, it was really hard. And then the physical damage, that bringing a human life into the world where you don't have abs. I had had abs since I was 3 years old. I had a six pack since I was, 6 years old. And for that to like go away and then not know if it's going to come back or how it's going to come back, it's really scary. It was really scary. And I had postpartum, and, I had resentment for a bit, and then struggled to really fight for what I needed to be myself again, as far as like time to myself, getting back to work. And yeah, I feel like now that I went back to work at 7 weeks postpartum. I did my
Wow.
did my first stunt job.
That wasn't just a in the background drinking tea type of gig.
No, should have been, but it wasn't. And I worked up until 15 weeks pregnant, so I was finishing Wynonna Earp the last season. So I went back to work because it was during COVID, and I finished. And like I checked with my doctor, I did all the things. I felt fine. I went, did a little fight scene. I did a wire gag onto mats, nice and safe. I rode a motorcycle. Like I did the things. And then I hit that we had the last day of the show. And I was like, I can't wear like tight jeans and crop tops anymore. And I don't want to do this. It was so interesting. My body told me, like, we don't want to do this anymore, which I appreciated, because I don't know if I would have made that decision myself. And then so I took that time off, and then at 7 weeks, my brain was like, I need to work. I need to remember who I was. So I
Mm-hmm.
said yes to this job and went to the rehearsal. So I was like, oh well, there's a rehearsal. So if it's something that's too crazy, and we were told it was like basically nothing. If it's too hard, I'll just tell them I'm like, I can't. Most people didn't even know I had had a kid. So anyways,
I mean, that's the other thing as well. Just to segue is that for women in creative industries, I know so many people who are even like fine art artists. They do not want it known that they are a mother, because the art world, the film world, the entertainment world, unless you're high-end celebrity and it's like, oh, it's interesting to see this person with a baby bump.
Yeah.
But I know so many people in those industries who keep it out of information,
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, they've had a pregnancy and that they're now a mom. And so yeah, that it's interesting. And I don't know if that's changing or not.
I feel like it is changing. It was definitely my biggest fear, was that I was going to, one, I'm not a young woman anymore, and so one, I don't share my age in the industry, because it comes with certain, ways.
Perceptions.
Yes, thank you. And then to be a mother on top of that, where the generation of stunt women before me were literally told as they were pregnant, be like, well, it was nice knowing you. And they wouldn't, they were out of the world. They were done. So it was to choose to have kids or to have a stunt career, and that there just was not the option of both. And so I was so afraid that people would make that decision for me. I was so pleasantly surprised that that was not my experience, and that anyone that chose, to not hire me because of that was probably someone that I didn't want to work for anyways. That it was just not in alignment with what I wanted. And so there was a lot of people that were really supportive. Some of the, you know, older stunt women that have kids, like I called them and I got to like confide in them and they checked in on me. And when I had gone back for this first job, there was a lot of, you know, of like seasoned veteran performers, male and female, that, you know, were so happy for me and didn't even think twice about me being, you know, back at it, and offered really caring advice as far as like how to balance it in their experience. And it was very useful, like information, and I wanted to hear their stories because I had no idea what I was doing. So then I found myself at this job and I did the rehearsal, and it was nothing. It was literally step vault through a window, run up to a fence. We were in a factory, and then you die. And I was like, I can do this. Like, this is amazing. And so it was supposed to shoot over, yeah, right. It was supposed to shoot over 3 days. And so we're on game day, first day. And I am like, I ended up breastfeeding for 7 months. So I had my pump that I would pump on the way to work, fill my bottles up. I bought a little like portable fridge that I plugged in to, you know, like the AD office, and like I'd store my milk as I would pump. But like it was such a hot mess, and they like my batteries, anyways, I ended up getting mastitis the first day because I had nowhere to pump, and they don't really provide you that like every 4 hour like 15-minute break to go.
No.
And you know, and I was not about to be the person that demanded
Disrupts
those.
the shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't. So anyways, that aside, the first day went super easy, went through the thing, fell down. The second day we show up and the director's like, yeah, we're going to change everything, which is what stunts is, right? Like, or film, like you got to be ready to pivot. And so the next day they're like, okay, the people that like climbed through and died, we need you to climb the fence now, this chain link fence. So I'm like, okay, I have no abs. Like there's not climbing. I'm mimicking it by standing on things. And then they're like, okay, well, we're now going to break the fence. So you're going to dangle and then fall to the ground.
Good to have abs.
You need a lot of things. I didn't have pads on because I was like, I'm not doing anything. So I was dumb and didn't wear pads. I didn't have abs. So when I climbed the fence and fell off, it looked real because it was. I couldn't hold on, so I fell off. And so here I am, like dangling from the fence, landing on a bunch of pipes and rolling to the cement ground. And I drove home crying with my eyes, like I was just like shaking, being like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this again. You know, like is this what real people feel like when they like fall down? Like, ow, like everything hurts because, you know, we build up a tolerance for discomfort and pain in our body as armor. And so, you know, when you're doing that full time, you don't feel those things the same way. I got home and my husband just gives me a glass of scotch, puts me in the bathtub. He says, everything's going to be okay. And I get through that job and I take another month off. And then I said yes to my next job. And it was a completely different experience because I had healed that much in 4 weeks. But I would say it took about 9 to 10 months postpartum to feel high functioning again, which for some people, that's like snapping back. And I was told you'd snap back. In my mind, I'm like, that's like 6 weeks, right? Like for me, that's snapping back from an injury. And so playing with that timeline was very humbling.
Have you ever had a period of your life where you've been in a state of less movement for such an extensive amount of time?
Never. No, I've had bad concussions from wrestling. I have had shoulder surgery, like reconstructed shoulder surgery. That was only a few months until I was like conditioning. And then, you know, I was climbing the rope 3 months later. Like this was the longest, scariest time.
And what kind of came up for you during that time?
In
like
way?
mentally of like self-identity and like what, because I think even though it's a very different context, I think a lot of people go through this kind of identity crisis at moments, at these pivotal moments in our life. And especially when we get to midlife, it's kind of like, well, is the best gone now? Like, what's ahead? And like, well, I'll never be as good as I was before. And my identity is very tied up in X, Y, and Z, but now I only do like half of Z and most of L and M. So like X and Y is like
Oh,
gone?
that so resonates with me. Yeah, I think um, there was a lot of gifts that came out of that experience. I mean, I don't like recommend volunteering to go through that process, as far as like making your money with your body at a very high level and then, taking it down to ground zero and building it back up. But out of that, it it gave me time to really check in with my body and heal things, small little things, you know, um, things that I was like mechanical things of over years and years, I was moving a certain way to protect like an old injury that then became part of my norm. And all of a sudden, then time goes by and I'm moving differently in a better way. So that was really cool because things that I had thought were not ever going to be possible, not because of pregnancy, but because of, you know,
Doing
past
life and
life, yeah, were then on the table. And I've actually learned new, really hard skills that I couldn't even do before I was pregnant that I can do now. And so that was really cool. That debuffed that myth a bit for me. Um, it forced me to give myself grace for doing instead of doing a lot all the time, which most movers and stunt people, like we train multiple disciplines every day, if you're taking that seriously and that's your job. And to know that 15 minutes of waving a stick around and 15 minutes of throwing boxing punches, doing that every day is better and more achievable and adds up to more than putting the pressure on myself to go and do a 2-hour kickboxing class that I'll only end up doing once a month because I can't commit that much time or the logistics. And so giving myself grace and understanding that a little adds up to a lot. I think that was the biggest lesson.
I'm so like, just shout that from the mountains.
Right? Yes. And I was that athlete that was like, train more, do more, train harder, train harder. Like that's how you get it. You grind through. And I've turned a corner of nope, a little goes such a long way.
Mm-hmm. And what are your consistents? Like what are your baseline consistency little practices that you do that keep you at one with yourself? Like whether they're kind of mental, whether it's the physical training, like what's a kind of insight into like what keeps you on point?
Mm.
What are your consistents?
Yeah, I would think, and I'm going to phrase it like within a week, because for me, that's consistent. If I'm ticking a certain number of boxes in the week, not daily, because that's impossible for me.
Yeah.
But one, I need to flip. I I am going to flip until I can't flip anymore. I want to be that 50-year-old that can still do a flip.
Oh yeah,
That
you of course you
right? Like
can.
I'm not even
Of
worried about
course.
it. Like that's what I'm going to
Done
do.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I need to be upside down, whether that's handstands, cartwheels, flips. I need to do something um, because that gives me great joy. Um, Usually I love going to a boxing or a kickboxing class because hitting stuff is such a great feeling. It is so cathartic, and like better a bag than like people. So,
I
um,
like throwing rocks.
ooh, right. Just that, like,
Just
yeah. And then especially if it's in water and they make a splash, something so
love it.
satisfying about that.
Love it.
I should add that to my list.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. Um, I do like going through my Taekwondo kicks. So, and partly like that's great range of motion for my lower body. It's really great stability conditioning, which allows, I think longevity in hiking, running, all of that kind of thing. And then I need to do something fun. So like right now the weather is really great and like we live in a town and we're addicted to a sport called kiteboarding. Don't know if you've ever seen it,
I've
but
seen it. It's wild.
it's so fun. Yeah, and
It's
it's so cool.
wild.
We have a bunch of different kites, so depending on the wind, and then they're 20-meter lines, and you're attached to a little belt, and you have a steering bar, and then you're on like a wakeboard and on the water, and you just, you tool around. I like to jump in the air and like do flips because,
That's your
why not?
thing.
And yeah, and so it's that season here now, and so I will try and do that at least once a week. We have the mountain bikes, so getting on a bike or doing something, fun, paddleboarding, whatever that's active, getting my body moving in I call it non-productive way for my job, but a productive way for my, mind and soul.
Definitely. And how much attention, or I mean, you've been this mover, as you say, since you were 2. So there's no semblance of like not moving.
No.
It's such a like a physical reaction. It's like, no. But within that, like, so I talk a lot about strong resting, and people have this idea of recovery or recovery days being, I order pizza and lie on the sofa, and it's like, no, that's not. I mean, for all means, like, there's nothing wrong with the occasional lying on the sofa and eating a pizza or whatever.
Yeah.
But for you, like, what does your recovery look like? What is the balance that facilitates that rebuild and repair on a regular basis of a body that is at an elite performance level? What does recovery look like?
That is a full-time job in itself, I would say. Absolutely. And I take that part of it very seriously. I think I understand, how expensive this tool is and how valuable it is. And
only one. You get only one.
Only get one. And luckily my job has some benefits, but also it has enough pay to offset investing in myself, whether that's in learning new skills, but most of it's in preventing and treating, my body so that it stays. So I have a massage therapist that comes to our house 3 times a month is probably the average. I have an acupuncturist. I have a chiro. I have an osteopath. I have a fascial healer. And depending on what my body needs and who I can get in, I would say I get it. And then I have a counselor and I have like a psychotherapist. So I have all of the things.
Yeah.
And a shaman too, if I, really have like some time to spend in there. But as of late, like last couple of years, it's been a thing.
I mean, I remember talking to Ryan, who runs GMB, Gold Medal Bodies, and he was saying, he sees in osteos or chiros in Japan, he said the name translates as bone breakers or bone fixers or something, which doesn't sound that inviting. But he says like, oh yeah, I go every week, of course. Yeah. Like, and I meet so many people who, because they're not performing at an elite or it's not their job, they seem to think that they're either not deserving of that or it's kind of not for them. And I'm always like, well, no, like, you have a body that, and it's not to say everyone needs those things because the demands being placed on them are different, but this general approach to recovery is full-time, intentional, planned, not just winging it, not just going, well, I went to bed and I ate like a normal breakfast. It's like, no.
My husband and I, most nights of the week, we have a basket that has lacrosse balls. We have, we have our own like cups. We have, foam rollers all out, and we will sit and put our TV show on, and the carpet is our stretching area. And it's like, if that is not done most nights of the week, then I feel an accumulation of work on my body build up. And I get treated by professionals at least twice a week, 2 different modalities usually, and sometimes more if I'm actually injured and needing to like heal fast. But it is a constant. I do cold river dips. I do, I have a personal trainer. Like, I am a personal trainer. I have a kinesiology degree, but I still have a personal trainer that tells me what to do and builds my plans. And, and she was brilliant. She actually specializes in pre and postpartum. And so she was with me. I knew her from circus. So she knows that world that I came from. And so I found her. I'm never gonna let her go. What a gem. And she's been on that journey with me, since I got pregnant, which has been really awesome because she's helped me transform back into like a person that I can do sets of pull-ups, I can jump, I can do all these things that but one thing I wanted to pivot to and sell was this like caring for yourself regardless of what level of active or athlete you are. I found a pelvic floor physio when I was pregnant, because some of the other stunt moms, that was the one thing that they said. They were like, you're going back to work after, like, get that sorted. And so I went in pretty early in my pregnancy, and I had always had like low back issues. Like I peed a little when I sneezed, jumping on trampoline. Like this is before kids, like, because I was an athlete that had so much, I did so much to my body that it was not operating, and flowing very well. I was forcing it to work for me. Anyways, I find this pelvic floor physio, and I still go see her, but I am better now than I was before I was pregnant. And regardless of if you have a kid or not, I think for women, that is the one thing that I highly suggest, is that anyone that is like active or not, or has like trauma or injury, like I did not realize how much an in sync pelvic floor changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I will jump on I have not, this is my one claim to fame post kid, is I have not peed a single drop off the toilet since I had a kid, since I did pelvic floor. And that was not something that I had a claim to fame before I was pregnant. Trampolines were dangerous.
These are like life goals.
Seriously, sometimes it's the simple things. And so, yeah, just getting in tune with my body, and I'm self-checking all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the difference of me being an athlete when I was 20, where I could train 5 hours a day, go out and drink all night, sleep for a few hours, rinse, repeat, and like be okay. Like I could do that for a few weeks before I needed to like recover for a day. And then in my 30s, I was kind of like a hot mess, because I all this accumulated, damage and workload had built up, and I didn't really, I didn't know. And then now entering like my late 30s, 40s, I'm counting those as like my golden movement years, because mm-hmm. I now, like, I feel like I have the knowledge and wisdom to match how I should train with what my body can handle. So I'm really maximizing that benefit of like, okay, I'm only going to train for a little bit. I'm going to like train smart. And I'm going to be able to do that every day because I'm training smart, instead of like train really hard and then have to recover for 3 days. And so, and I'm also, oddly enough, finding that I'm learning more that way than when I had high volume of mm-hmm. work.
Mm-hmm. It's the crazy thing of when we sleep is when we learn the memory patterns, the movement patterns, or we have the memory, and we embody and then embed the movement skills. That only happens when we sleep. So if you're doing like 15 minutes 4 times a week of a certain thing, you're going to learn more. So that would be 60 minutes than if you did 1 3-hour session.
Yeah.
And it just feels better to do that.
I'm a happier mover because of that. Absolutely. But it is hard too. Like it is hard because well, and you moving around, like we're moving around young people all the time that still don't have that wisdom, and that also probably have the capacity to do more mm-hmm. and recover faster. And I find my ego sometimes like, it's like, hey, hey there. And I'm like, shut up. Like, no, you don't need to be here. Like you just cause trouble, but it is like, it's hard sometimes. You want to like throw down and be invincible and all of that, and being smart and wise, like doesn't, it's not as hot and attractive of a package, but like,
mm-hmm. But I think also there's a kind of wisdom that comes with a maturity around the why of why we're moving, and having this longevity in it. Like I'm in it for the long game. I'm movement for life, movement for joy, movement for just that. I mean, sometimes like I had this crazy analytics thing done, which said, if you want to build muscle and this is your body composition, you want to do this, and this is what you need to do. And it was like, it's not very much. Like, but I really love moving.
Mhm.
And it was interesting in that, like, well, I could do that. I could follow that plan, but I wouldn't be so happy because it doesn't involve enough of like, just go out and play and move. And like, I do my movement snacks. And then if my nervous system is like, hey, good to go, then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to do some handstands. Oh, and then like, oh, okay, now I may go to the park and just do some monkey bars, or oh, I'm here at the house, can't even be bothered to walk to the park. Okay, I'm going to do some kettlebells. So and then it's like 2 hours. And I've just been kind of playing. And all I did start with is like, just going to roll around on the floor for a little bit to
Mhm.
see.
I
And
love
that's,
movement snacks. I love that term, movement snacks. One, I love to snack. So it's a very like palatable term. And I think it does so help when we turn our brain into little bits seem so much more doable. And if you can commit to a
yeah,
little, you'll be surprised how a 15-minute commitment turns into 2 hours of playing. Like
yeah.
if
And
you had said it started being like, okay, I got to move for 2 hours,
I'd be like, no
you
way.
might be overwhelmed. You're like, I'm just not even going to start because like it's
No.
insurmountable.
I mean, the energy, my whole thing is that movement begets more movement, and movement gives you energy. So when you start the day and you're like, ah, a bit tired, don't really feel like doing anything. And then if you can just feel like, just going to roll on the floor because that will feel kind of nice. It's like a nice self massage. Then that is going to give you like the next little dose of movement. And then you do one thing else. Like, oh, let me just do that. I had a client yesterday who messaged me saying, I was, didn't feel great. I was really tired, but I committed. I was just going to do one of the things out of the like 5 or 6 things. And she said, but I was really adamant, like just one. And she said, well, I did one and that felt really good. So then I did number 2 as well. Then I did 2 and 3. Oh, I did all of yesterday's movement things, but she had to only commit to one. And to hear that that's valid for a professional elite mover, I think it's nice for people to hear that, because we give ourselves excuses of, yeah, but I'm this age, yeah, but I'm out of shape, yeah, but it's not my thing, I'm a scientist, or it's not my thing because I do this. And something I found, and I don't know how it is amongst kind of stunt professionals, is that personal trainers I've met train less doing their own thing than all the other people I know who have different professions outside of being personal trainers, because they spend so much time giving to other people, and they're kind of doing a little bit. They're not, doing the
And they're
training.
demonstrating and then they're in it.
Yeah, but they're so fried.
Yeah.
They don't do like they're just tired all the time and not. And it was really insightful for me when I wasn't kind of doing any movement coaching. Was like, wow, I'm a filmmaker and an academic, and like I train like 6-7 times a week. I have no problem. and and yet
I moved the least when I ran a gymnastics center. I moved the least because I was coaching, like I was constantly
Mhm.
running classes, getting people to do classes, and then, private lessons, like, and training people. I played and moved the least when I was but I loved being around that energy. But like, I'm like, I way rather do it than watch other people do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like you, I'm so fortunate to have like found a vocation that, pays me to move. But like you, it's a life thing. Like I want to always be moving. I always want to be, you know, creatively moving my body. And I really do give my dad credit for that, because he was that person that in the house we were always active, and we were active because he was the one in the pool swimming with us. He was the one going, and still to this day runs 3 to 4 miles every other day. And he's 70 now, and he still is running. He's still outside playing golf. He played tennis and squash until not so long ago. He would pull out the baseball bats and the things, and he would kick us out of the house. We never played video games. We were like climbing trees and playing tag, um and that he's the one that instilled that move it or lose it
Mhm.
mentality. And like, if you stop using your body, it's going to stop working for you.
100%. Yeah. And I think also, just to go back to, so the only time I've kind of moved with you, no, it's actually twice at two different parkour events. But the first time, and I said to you this when I asked you to do the podcast, this was the favorite, and I don't use the word favorite very often, but this was absolutely the most favorite movement workshop I've ever done was when you led a group of us, both men and women. I think it was Greco-Roman wrestling, or it could have been, I don't know what the phrase you used at the beginning, or like a generalist wrestling or freestyle wrestling. Freestyle wrestling, yeah. Which shows how much I don't know about wrestling. And I loved it. Like, it spoke. I'm very comfortable in my body. I'm very comfortable next to another body. And it was really interesting for me that, so number one, you started us off with just the easiest things. If you'd said at the beginning, by the way, you're going to end up on top of that person and you're going to do this and you're going to do that, I think loads of people would have just quietly walked backwards and run off into the bushes.
Yeah.
And you didn't. You guided us through this beautiful journey of connection with our own body, of these different ways of moving, and then how to experience that it's so 360 degrees strong. And it was incredible to me how very uncomfortable so many people were kind of in their own body, and then to bring another body into the mix was very interesting. So just give me like the whole women wrestling thing. Because you were a wrestler for Canada, is that correct? You were a national team? Yeah.
Yeah, I wrestled at the national level for 8-10 years. So I was fortunate enough to travel, around the world to wrestle and represent Canada, and so that that consumed 12 months of my life for a good 10 to 15 years.
Amazing.
But I didn't start it till I was 16, and I started in high school when I was a cheerleader. My best friend was a football player, and he was talking about the toughest sport he's ever done is wrestling, and I was a gymnast for like 13 years. Like,
gymnastics is brutal.
It's brutal. Like I was doing it 25 hours a week when I was 10 years old, so I had no life outside of. And am I grateful for most of what that gave me? Absolutely. But like, that comes at a cost. And so, yeah, he was just like, it's so tough. I'm like, I can do so tough. I don't know why. I was intrigued by, I think, the challenge, the physical challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I showed up to like wrestling tryouts in my cheerleading, uniform. And I remember the coach like bug-eyed, rolled his eyes, and okay, whatever. Like, because there had been one girl on the high school team up until that point. And so I go and I do tryouts, and I flipping loved it. Like the first day. And it was all just conditioning. It was like run, push-ups, sit-ups, like jump over their back, crawl through, forward rolls, backward rolls, cartwheels. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in
Day at the park. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, getting to like learn how to like overpower another human with just your body was so cool, and learning about like letting energy flow, like, and when you're fighting like the an object, meaning imposable force, versus letting it move, and learning how to be efficient with your body, and learning how to like feel kinesthetically another human, how they move, and use that, to overpower them and demolish them.
Conquer all.
Yeah, it was therapeutic, it was exciting, and it was physically just the hardest and most exciting thing that I had done. And it's literally one of the oldest sports in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the original Athens Olympic sports.
Yeah.
And so and so I started off, I was like the only one on my high school team, only girl. And then by the time I graduated high school, I was on a team of 16 girls. And
amazing.
So I was again, like parkour, I wasn't in the pioneering group that led the way. I was in that very next generation. And so you know,
Trailblazing. Still trailblazing.
really, I count them as the
Yes.
trailblazers. I count me as riding that wave that they paved.
I mean, I think every generation takes things and shares things, and there's value to those. And there's always kind of like, the originals and this or that, but then there's also like there's such a sharing of all these kind of human ideas and capacities, and I've always found it, it's easier to be it when you can see it. And like,
Mm,
I'd never seen a woman wrestle.
yeah,
You see there's some kind of like theatrical, highly sexualized, shiny outfit thing, and it's like, I didn't even know like normal women wrestling was a normal thing.
yeah.
There's judo and BJJ and all of those things, but like what we did seemed to be different. It was like, I don't know what it was, but I loved it.
Well, and also in America, women's wrestling was one of the few sports where it developed so much slower than it did in Canada. So when I was on a full university team in Canada with 20 women, we would go down to the States for tournaments and teams would have one token girl on them.
Wow.
There was no college team
Hmm,
women's
hmm.
wrestling. And so, yeah, it wasn't heard of, especially, down there. And it was, you had all the other options of, the BJJ. And most people, even now, they're like, oh, did you jump off the top ropes in like your bikini? And I was like, no, but I'm like, that looks super fun. Like I'm here for it. When the show Glow came out, I was like, this is my calling. I need to do this. This is
Uh-huh.
fun. Didn't happen, but like, still one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, no, I've watched a little bit of it, and it's amazing. And I think we've had, like, as women growing up, like, so I had there's a swimmer, an Olympic swimmer called Sharon Davies, and she trained like in the college near my town, near my city. And it was always like, wow, like, I don't know, it just brought something closer to home of like, there's someone like here. And then she was on this other TV show. And then, I would race home from Brownies when I was like 7 or 8 years old and watch like the original 70s Charlie's Angels. And it was like, I want to be them. I want to
Yeah.
be sassy, sexy, beautiful, and really capable, and not necessarily in all that order. But that's what I wanted. I wanted to be the action hero of my life. And I was a very shy child, but I had this inner like,
I'm going to be a badass. Yeah.
yeah, there's a hero story here, and it can play out. And I think that the more that people are seeing, and now also, like, how is it in the industry for women playing women? Like, I know of so many stunts that were done of like, they got the skinny guy to do the women's stunt. How is, like, has Me Too changed that as that industry, or how is
Yeah.
that playing out right now?
Yeah. I think it is, at least in my world, so far from, an acceptable practice now. I will say though, in my career, it has happened once where when I was on set, there was two men that got called in to double women and do the hard stunts. And to this day, that did not sit well with me, because I was like,
Hmm,
there's so many women that one could have or would wanted to do that gag, and that also
hmm,
don't look like, didn't have to wear breastplate underneath their costume. And there was just that, never, it still doesn't sit well with me.
hmm.
But it has only happened once, and that it is it's never really come up in a conversation in my company since. That now it's more about, other representation,
Hmm,
having
hmm.
ethnic representation, and that kind of thing, which is, a little trickier to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And what's on the road ahead for you in terms of how are you thinking about at age 40 a stunt career,
Yeah.
and how does that look and feel like?
Well, seeing as most people in my industry think that I'm much younger.
And I thought you were much younger as well, including me.
Yeah, I mean, I am not afraid of calling myself 41. You also can't change it, but yeah, I don't feel like what people say 40 should feel like.
I've got no idea what 40 should feel like. I'm 53. I've got no idea what I'm supposed to do or say or feel or look like. I just I just do my thing.
To be honest, you remain a very inspirational force that way of that age does not match with expected ability or disability or anything. And your zest for life and movement is just, it is. I look up to it. And so that's just what I want to keep doing. I feel like I have another 10 years of, of throwing down, falling down, at an intense level, because the reality is, my body will hit a certain point where like, okay, we are not going to recover this
Or
fast.
you're not going to want to.
No,
You
I
could,
won't.
but are you going to want to?
No. And so I've had a couple opportunities to be a coordinator on some small projects. So being the boss lady and I say
Nice.
boss lady, but like, working behind the camera, and still working in the action side of things. And so it would be my dream and my wish to transition into that, over the next 5-10 years, so that, I can stay in this world. Like, I love storytelling. I love solving problems with movement. It's kind of what I like to say, and creating a story with action. Like nothing makes me happier other than seeing my 2-year-old, like, do something really, really cool and interesting.
And is he, I remember being at Chow Bell's house, one of the Yamakasi founders, and him and his wife's also an amazing athlete. And because they're always doing handstands.
Yeah.
They're always, or like, they're always moving. There's a lot of inversions. There's a lot of movement around the house. And so the baby and the toddler, they see movement. And so she would be trying to do all these things and they'd be like, oh no. It's too soon. It's too soon. So I'm just wondering, like, for your son, it's going to be really normal, just that women are strong and powerful and full of action.
I secretly, not so secretly, had always hoped for a daughter because I wanted the opportunity to show, what I mean? Like I wasn't raised with a great level of, confidence or, or that instillment that, women can do anything and everything and are badasses and can, juggle and all of that. And so that was something I had to work towards and learn and champion myself most, excluding my really lovely group of cheerleaders that are in my life of, of friends and partners. But now I have a chance for my son to see that, still that moving through life is a thing, that exploring and being playful and, being childlike and exploring and having that, like that mind is a mindset. It is not attached to your age. And so I'm loving showing him that also, like, a mom can like go and wear a superhero cape at work and then come home and, roll around on the floor and, and we build slides together and he's already doing forward rolls on every surface possible. He hasn't learned the hard, soft surface, thing yet, but
he will.
Yeah. And like jumping on a trampoline and him and I crawling through the forest, and he knows how to yell, wrestle, wrestle. And then he'll run and tackle my leg and, I fall down, and so he's just amazing. It's really cool to see. I'm really enjoying this stage where, you get to, and also it goes back to re-inspiring yourself to in the morning where I'm normally, oh my gosh, I have to sit here and just have a cup of coffee before I can do anything. Well, at 6 a.m., he's like, chase me. And so we are doing in the living room, where then, you get tackled and then, we're down playing cars and you're like, but none of that is something that I regret doing, because like you said, like once you start moving, then you want to move more and you want to move more. And then you find yourself, you're like, oh, it actually, like, I'm moving better and I'm hurting less. And so that part too is a gift, because it makes you, have movement snacks during the day without even having to plan them. You just have to say yes to your 2-year-old that has these random ideas.
And I think also you not to, I mean, I can understand you wanting to be the female role model for a daughter, but to say that you still are the female role model to so many women and younger women and older women and younger women and girls, and seeing more and hearing more from kind of, you know, these you're the hidden stars. I remember there was like Katie McDonald's doing, you know, lots of the Star Wars work and things like that. And now, you know, the actresses are saying like, people are celebrating me, but you know, the bit that they loved, like, that was Katie. Or, you know, that was Fizz, or actually that's Georgia in that video game where that character's doing that thing that you've fallen in love with that character because they do those things.
Mm-hmm.
This is a real person, and this is their name, and they're flesh and blood and skin and bones, and they wake up and they have the same busy lives. They just do a lot of different things, and they probably spend way more time recovering than more than the training. And but there's still a normalcy as well. I think like creative industries and film and stuff like that as well, because everyone consumes it,
Mm-hmm.
but so few are involved in the making of it, even though you know, it's like a city, you know, like it's like the scale of film productions and video games are just enormous. But not, and you know, most people don't know the reality of that industry in the same way I don't know the reality of the agricultural industry, but I'm not consuming the products with a passion that moves me emotionally, intellectually, that I empathize with characters, that I get these new visions and these stories, and we respond to stories. So you're part of this wave of amazing female action representatives. I'm kind of just thinking out loud here of like,
I
we're
love
seeing new stories that we can be.
it. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I that's why I wanted to kind of share some of your story and to have you on here and to say like, this is also a busy mom, this is also a wife, this is someone who's like out there and then coming home late from work and feeling like, oh shit, my son's already in bed, you know, and then getting up like, wow, God, I've got to go and be in that funny world all day again tomorrow. And I'm grateful, and there's still the struggles, and it's not all shiny.
It's not. No, the shiny bits are so shiny
They are so
and
shiny.
wonderful. It is not, and it is a constant choice and a balance and a recalibrating and a dance that I am not doing perfectly, but I am doing it the best I can, and I'm enjoying the ride. I will say, you know, out on the side where like, yay, raising a small human is actually like really rewarding and fun for me now. Um, yeah, it's so rad, and like I get paid to play. Like I could not be more grateful, and without the pressure of having to be the actor that is responsible for the character, I get to go
Just be
and
normal life.
that. I get to have fun. I get to go in for the glory moment, you know, where I always find that so rough because I have an appreciation for what the actors have to go through to
Mm-hmm.
bring a character to life, to tell a story, to go through those grueling hours, getting in character, getting out of character, building arc, like, you know, connecting with their audience emotionally, and then having their whole private lives, like, you know,
Oh,
on
horrible.
display. But they'll do a whole day on set, and they'll do a really emotional or heavy scene that's like 10 pages of dialogue, and people will be like, okay, cut, no problem, all right, now bring in the stunt double, and they like, I jump off a railing and crash onto the floor, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that was the coolest thing I ever saw. And I'm always like, I mean, like, yes, but like
Like,
also,
thank you, and
I know it's
thank you,
such a
and
hard dance. So it comes with great appreciation that these and strong women that are getting strong roles and getting to do like really cool things, and then I get to fill in, you know, those gaps and fall down for them. I couldn't be
it's
happier.
I'm so happy you're so good at falling down.
Not gonna lie, my high school guidance counselor never offered me this as
Never
a
saw this
potential.
coming.
No, no.
Never saw it coming. But it's such a great fit. It's such a great, and what's beautiful is that it took a friend to give you a break and to call out the reality and say, go do it. And you can come back if it doesn't work. But like, and that's such a beautiful moment of, a lot of people have, you know, maybe that baseline of like, well, it could be possible in whatever field, but no one has kind of given them that chance. And it takes a lot of bravery for you to have done what you did, And so for me, this is all, it's kind of just this, there's a lot of heart and there's a lot of bravery involved. And I think tying this back into parkour, like I'll never forget standing on a railing at Latimer Road in West London, an evening parkour class. And we had to jump. It was like a cat leap. So this is when you jump from the railing onto a wall. So you catch the wall with your hands over the top. And it was a relatively achievable jump for me. And the lady next to me, I remember it was only her like second or third class. And she just said, no one's asked me to be brave in a really long time. And it has stuck with, you know, like 15 years later, it has stuck with me. I can like take myself back to that moment. And I believe that we, like this act of being brave and having adventures and creating the stories and being the action hero of our own stories involves a practice of training that and flexing, being brave. It takes bravery for you to turn up on set and do the things you're asked to, even if they're like, you know, there was always something with the parkour athletes when I was kind of working with them on commercials and things, was that no one was ever allowed to do anything that was above maybe 70% of their norm. Mm-hmm. So it's always, you're never actually seeing 100%. The best of what someone can do.
You're seeing something they can do 10 out of 10 times on a sprained ankle under crappy conditions, but that
exactly
is consistent. And I think I love that about it. Going back to what you said about like asking yourself to be brave. I like to like share with like kids or people I coach that's like being brave to say yes, like finding bravery to say yes. And I think that was the one thing I was most proud of in that turning point. Was I could have very easily, even after, you know, someone had like pointed the way and opened all the windows and doors, and just being like, ooh, I'm just going to stay comfortable right here, you know, even knowing that there was something calling me and something out of alignment where I was, you know, the unknown is so scary. And so anyone that can find the bravery to say yes to whatever it is, whether it's joining a parkour class at 40, 50 years old, where you're like, you know, or right. Yeah, or taking swim lessons when you're, you know, anything, or, you know, actually putting down to write a book, you know, which
that's vulnerable and scary.
Oh man. And I remember when I met you, and I had, you know, I'd already read your book, Breaking the Jump, and it had almost the same level of profound impact as that weekend did, because just sharing the history of a sport that I fell in love with gave me so much context to what kind of world I was stepping into and what was possible. And I felt connected with so many like-minded people. It gave me permission to keep doing what I was curious about. And it's a really beautiful book. It sits in my office on my bookshelf.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm touched. And also just, I mean, the energy. So we've been at 2 events together. There was the Art of Retreat and then the Women's Parkour Gathering, which for me was just extraordinary to be in an environment with 100 women all doing parkour. Like I'd visually never seen that before. When like the second day, when we're in the forest and like stone throwing and all that stuff, but I remember like the warm up that Caitlin and Brandy were running, but your energy as a participant, your energy as a coach, your energy as a performer is just infectious. It's
like a squirrel on crack. Just so
like this lady cannot be contained.
Right? Yeah, but she crashes hard after because she puts it all out there. Well, I'm so glad it was received well, because I was on such a high. Like I get so jazzed when I'm in groups, but mostly groups of women that are curious and exploring their boundaries, and and being brave and sharing ideas and cheering.
And it was all levels. That's what I loved as well.
Yes.
All levels. So,
and I don't even remember that. Because I don't remember, oh, there was people that weren't very good and there were people that were amazing. I just remember
because
it
they're the
was
same for
a
you.
seamless sea of women and everyone was helping everyone. And
Yeah.
it was, oh,
Yeah.
we need another one of those.
We do.
Yeah.
I mean, I miss,
Really, a women's gathering would be amazing
yeah.
because
There was
that,
one on the East Coast recently, but it clashed with something. But like, I want there to be another. I want to train with you. I want to train with Brandy. I want
if you hear
Caitlin
about
there.
it, let me know. And if I hear about it, I'll let you know.
Please
I would
do.
carve that out of my time. I would make that a priority.
Oh, it's so unique. And so just quickly to round up, are there any projects you're allowed to talk about that we can look forward to seeing you in, or are you still under can't talk about it till it's released? So I know that's the way the work goes.
It does sometimes. But no, Last of Us was the last kind of big secret one. Most of the other projects were just, I had just finished doubling Juliette Lewis on Yellow Jacket season 2, which was really cool to meet her. Oh my gosh, I'd been a fan
Nice.
for a long time. But to be honest, the last couple of months, there's been like the writer's strike started
Yes.
and
Yeah,
kind of
that'll change things.
so we're in a really weird holding pattern right now. And so the last couple of months, I've been traveling.
Kiteboarding.
I've been filling my cup with home and adventure. I've been doing some trips. I've been doing some reno projects. I've been trying to garden. I've been out in the mountains, and now, I'm getting ready for work. I'm getting squirrely right now. So available for hire.
Hire this lady. Get her on the shoot. Get it. Cool. Any final messages to my audience of curious midlife women and more? Anyone else who's listening?
Keep listening to Julie. She's is on to
I'm like, go play with Andrea. Let's go wrestle.
Find me on Instagram. I will play. I will
Yeah.
share. But that's it. Yeah, I think be brave and say yes, and a little goes a long, long way. Mhm.
Yes. Thank you. And what's your Instagram?
It is Andrea.m.Ross.
I remember the ones when you were, I think it was you and some other mums who were coming back to doing like handstand training and the babies were in front of you.
I will say that was the one skill. Like, I lost a lot when I was pregnant. I did handstands my entire pregnancy. I have a picture of me doing a handstand 2 days before I gave birth.
Wow. I'm still figuring out how to breathe when I'm upside down. Like, I get to 15 seconds and I'm like,
if I exhale, everything crumbles.
Yeah, it does. Like, or I can do tiny ones. I can do like, but and then anyway.
You're going to figure it out.
I'll figure it out.
You're going to unlock it and then you're going to message me and be like, 30 seconds, figured it out.
Yeah. And it's like time travel. It's so weird, upside down. So, but to do that 2 days before giving birth, it's there. It's in there. So anyway, thank you for your time. Carry on moving, being brave. I'm always excited to see what you're doing and where you're going. And thank you for sharing some of this kind of behind the scenes.
My pleasure. I just was so excited to have a chat with you today and catch up. And
it's lovely to see you again.
I'm going to put it out to the universe now. There's going to be a female gathering. I'm going to get to see you in person and give you a big fat hug and then snack on movement for days on end. Yeah. For sure. My cup will be very full. That would be amazing. Oh, thank you, Andrea. Love you loads. And we will speak soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the show. Remember to subscribe and leave a review and let me know what resonated, what you liked, what it brought up, what you're curious about, and what you would like to hear. You can go to julieangel.com and you will find a bunch of great free resources there. There is the free Move More course, your free movement snacks guide, and if you are interested in reclaiming and increasing your physical strength and confidence so you can get your mojo back, be brave, adventurous, and age with grace, then message me via social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram or through my website, or email me at drjulieangel@gmail.com. That's drjulieangel@gmail.com, and let's set up a call. And until the next time, enjoy, stay curious, and I'm glad you enjoyed the show.